You don't need to go to the end of the world or some exotic land to see strange things. You just need to go to Reddit. Check out how its users share weird and crazy stuff they found in their houses. It's rare when old finds in the house have any value, but this married couple managed to win the jackpot. In Cleveland, Ohio, they started making home repairs. The man was tearing dusty boards from the ceiling in the basement when he noticed something behind bars. It was a small green suitcase. He found the second one in another part of the basement. At first, the husband and wife thought the suitcase contained some old baseball cards, but instead, they found a treasure worth 33,000 pounds. There were old banknotes, and some of them were very rare. They were delighted with this find, but didn't spend money on entertainment. According to the man, they used the cash to pay off their mortgage. These people were even luckier. Several residents of a small English town in North Yorkshire were doing repairs in the house. They discovered one of the largest hoards of 18th century English gold coins ever found in Great Britain. The owners removed a small clay cup the size of a soda can, hidden in the concrete under the floorboards. The bowl's surface was covered with a thin layer of salt, and inside, there were about 260 gold coins. The estimated value of the entire treasure was about $200,000. But it all depends on the auction. Perhaps the amount will reach $500,000. One user came to his mom's new multi-apartment building. He went to the basement and found a huge bank vault there. There was this round, thick metal door leading to the bank safe. He didn't find any money or gold, but the vault was in excellent condition. Of course, other Reddit users found out how this could happen. If a bank goes bankrupt, it takes all its belongings from the building except for a giant safe. The fact is that dismantling such an object requires huge costs. It can't be removed without expensive equipment, so banks leave their safes in the building. Another Reddit user wrote that a law firm bought a closed bank building and turned the vault into an office. They couldn't break through a thick wall in this room to install a window, so they just hung a photo with a window. Another user showed a rather creepy discovery made in the basement of his house. It was a huge hole leading into the darkness and filled with cold liquid. The user didn't panic and measured the pit. It was only 8 feet deep, half filled with ordinary water. He didn't find anything else, no secret room or dungeon. In fact, this was not just a pit, but a particular well called a cistern. And again, thanks to Reddit users for the answer. In the past, people installed such things in many homes to replenish water supplies. Cisterns were popular in dry areas where residents couldn't access a water supply system, or when people were afraid that a river or reservoir was polluted. They collected rainwater and stored it in these wells. To avoid contamination from the surrounding soil, they cemented these pits. People used water for house cleaning, showering, and laundry. You could even install filters in such a tank to drink clean water. This user found something strange not in his house, but in the basement of the office where he worked. In a dark, concrete room, among the junk, he saw a red iron door leading into the unknown. "Keep closed at all times" was written on its cold surface. There were no locks or keyholes on it, only bolts. The user could have easily opened it, but didn't. Would you dare? The thing was actually not scary at all, but it was pretty dangerous. This is transformer storage with a powerful electrical voltage inside. It can explode or catch fire or even electrocute someone. Therefore, it was placed in the basement away from people. No one except electricians is allowed to go there. Someone found a strange tiny room in the attic of their new apartment behind a small iron door. Inside, the user found a small bed, several shelves, and a small window. It seems that someone lived there, but who and why? There's almost no information about this. Imagine that you're walking through an abandoned house and suddenly see a phantom stuck in the wall and trying to escape. One Reddit user photographed an unusual installation in an abandoned house. It looks like a person trying to break out of the wall. Of course, there is no mystery or magic here, just someone's great sculptor skills, but still, it looks pretty creepy. Many users find secret rooms in their homes, and no one knows what those were used for and who lived there. But this guy found the most practical and valuable space. In the backyard of his house, he discovered a shelter from radioactive waste built in the 60s. It looks pretty atmospheric and safe. This user moved into a new house and found this strange white door in the wall. It looked like an area for a water heater or something, but it turned out that the door led to a strange room. It was small but cozy. Someone even put a carpet on the floor. But there was another door with a lock at the back of this room. The user opened the black door and stepped inside another, a much creepier room. The walls and ceiling were covered with soundproof plates and white plastic tarps. Also, he saw 3 to 4 outlets and some kind of pad that looked like a small bed. There was a briefcase on the floor with an old wooden box, envelopes with money from different countries, and 4 small silver bars. But the strangest thing in that place was a black safe. The user opened it and found several VHS cassettes and a white sheet. "Save yourself" was written on it in black ink. The user wanted to share the contents of the tapes on Reddit. Many people thought that all this was fake and didn't believe him. But then another user said he knew the previous owner of the house. It was just an ordinary guy. Then the user posted the contents of the tapes. The recordings were quite unsettling. Someone suggested that all this was a promo campaign for some horror movie. But then the same user admitted that it was all a hoax that had gone out of control and become viral. He wrote a post where he described in detail how he created it, but the site administration deleted it. Let's finish our list with the most unusual apartment. Imagine that you're walking through a residential Parisian neighborhood and entering a multi-story building where ordinary people live. You go up the stairs and stop near an old door. You press the handle down and go inside. It seems to you that you're in a horror movie about ghosts. Cabinets, chairs, all the furniture here is made at the beginning of the last century. All the rooms look like an old antique store. Everything is covered with a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. There are sinister-looking dolls and stuffed toys on the floor, but nothing strange happened here. The owner left this place in the 40s. She left everything as it was. She moved to live somewhere else and didn't tell anyone about the apartment. Why she didn't come back is also unknown. The apartment has been in this condition for 70 years. The owner's relatives hired appraisers to estimate the cost of the apartment. In 2010, they went to this place, opened the door, and found a painting by Italian artist Giovanni Boldini, which he created in the 19th century. This painting was sold for $2.5 million.
Hey, look at this stunning futuristic interior. It's a long studio room with a low ceiling, white walls, and windows overlooking the forest. And there's also a large panoramic window in the corner. You can easily invite hundreds of guests here, and they will all be impressed. So what, would you like to buy or rent this spot? Oh, there's another minor nuance. This house is an airplane. Unfortunately, you can only fly somewhere on it if you invest a couple of $1 million for repairs, but it's possible to live here. A resident of Oregon, Bruce Campbell, created this place. He turned a giant Boeing 727 into his home, where he spends about 6 months every year. Bruce installed 2 bathrooms and a shower, made a kitchen, and equipped this place with electricity. It has everything you need for a comfortable stay. But the most incredible thing is that you can create precisely the same house. To understand how to do this, let's look at Bruce's story. As a teenager, he was watching TV when he saw a report of an aircraft boneyard. These iron birds amazed him and inspired him to create a new home. Growing up, Bruce began to study electrical engineering and always remembered his teenage dream. In the 70s, he bought 10 acres of land in the woods near the town of Hillsboro, Oregon. This area is approximately equal to 8 football fields. After that, he began to look for a plane. In 1999, he hired a rescue company to help him find a Boeing. Soon, they found a 200-seat passenger aircraft in Greece. Since the plane was already out of order and no one would fly it, Bruce bought it for little money. It was just $100,000. The amount is small, considering that a new Boeing costs about $100 million. Airport staff removed the engine and fuel from the plane, disassembled it, and sent it to Oregon. After the logistics problems were solved and the plane ended up in the woods, Bruce began to turn it into a house. The repair work lasted several years. When everything was ready, the media found out about Bruce and made him a celebrity. He showed that even such gigantic things as an airplane could be recycled. Bruce invites anyone to his house to show that airplanes can be used for cheap housing. The advantages of such a house are that the airplane's outer layer can protect from cold, moisture, wind, and sun. Every year in the US, several hundred aircraft break down. People transport them to the aircraft boneyard, where these planes are waiting for repairs or turning into scrap metal. And many of them are in good condition. Another unusual house is located in Tokyo, Japan. It's definitely not your choice if you go to relax alone or think that home is a place where no one can bother you. Welcome to the transparent house. It looks pretty stylish. There are huge panoramic windows without curtains and no walls and doors between the rooms. There are a bunch of large shelves and ladders inside. You can climb, jump, and hang here. The height of the house is 3 floors. It looks like a modern urban tree house. This place is open to everyone. And now, take a look at the most fantastic tree house. Can you see it? No? No wonder. This house is almost invisible in the forest because of its mirrored surface. It's called Mirror Tree House and is located in Sweden. At night with the lights off, this small building completely merges with nature. Now turn on the lights in the windows and take a closer look. This is a stylish and modern building where anyone can spend the night. You need to pay for it though because it's a hotel. Here's another tree house. More precisely, it's a huge building built on several trees. It's called Minister's Tree House and is located in Crossville, Tennessee. It's considered to be the biggest tree house in the world. It's built from recycled wood. It occupies almost 5 floors in height and has several rooms. If elves lived in the forest, then this house would be their bank or the administration of the woods. Let's get down from the trees to the ground, more precisely, under the ground. It's not even a house, but a small town. And every building here is pretty unusual. You won't see this town from the outside. All houses, cafes, post offices, and other buildings are located in the pits from which pipes protrude, releasing steam. Welcome to Coober Pedy, Australia. Enter any house and see that there is ground instead of the usual walls and wallpaper. Such unusual architecture is because this place is the world's largest reserve of opal. Most of these minerals, which are sold all over the world, are mined in this city. Opal was first found in these lands in 1915. Since then, people have been coming here to search for precious stones. There are no mining companies here because it's impossible to determine large deposits of opal with the help of technology. Therefore, people mine it manually with picks and shovels. This work is quite long and difficult. So, the town residents rent a place where they dig and build a house. Spread your arms in different directions. That's the width of our next house. The distance from one wall to the other is less than the length of your body. It looks tiny, but people are happy to live here. Welcome to the Kurret House. The narrowest house in the world is located in Poland. On the streets of Warsaw, you will easily notice it. It's like it's stuck between 2 buildings. Everything is pretty cute and stylish inside. The white interior adds a feeling of extra space. The Kurret House serves as a transit point for travel writers. If you're working on a book, this place will be a great source of inspiration for you. This house looks like something from another planet. It's called Robert Bruno's Steel House. It stands on 4 legs, has a strangely shaped window, and is made of metal. This strange house is located in Ransom Canyon, Texas. This is the creation of the sculptor Robert Bruno. He built it from the 70s until 2008. He used about 150 tons of blackened steel and made every detail by hand. Unfortunately, the sculptor passed away before he could complete his masterpiece. There's a toilet house in South Korea, close to Seoul. This big building looks like a giant toilet bowl. It's made of steel, white concrete, and glass. The purpose of this house is to promote the hygiene and sanitation of toilets. Many diseases are spread because of poor cleaning. Inside the toilet, you will find 2 guest rooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bathrooms. and to rent the whole building, you need to pay about $50,000. Looking at this house in one of the alleys of London, it may seem to you that the building is about to fall apart. The house was built in the 16th century and originally didn't look like this. But in 1687, the city council ordered the demolition of the building to free space for something else. The house was almost destroyed, but its owner sued the city council. He won the case and the council was obliged to restore the house. But they did it in a hurry, using cheap materials. For many years, the wood has been bending and the house has got such an unusual shape. Let's end our realtor's journey with this fun house. People who love skateboarding will be delighted to visit this place. Welcome to Skateboard House Malibu, California. You don't leave your home to start riding. The whole house has a circular curved shape and there's no corners in it. There are beds and tables here, which you can also use for tricks.
If you're looking for the coolest accommodation in Paris, you may consider an apartment inside the Eiffel Tower. When Gustave Eiffel was designing his most famous construction, he added a private apartment for himself right at the top. It's rather spacious, especially for Paris, where people often live in apartments 10 times smaller. It had a workshop, living space, a dining room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and piano. But there was no bedroom, so it's likely that no one ever slept there. No one lives there now, except for the mannequins of Eiffel himself, his daughter, and one of Thomas Edison. Members of the scientific community, chosen by Eiffel and other notable guests, were allowed to visit the property, and Edison was one of the chosen ones. Now, across the pond, the New York Public Library also hosts secret apartments for the staff. These apartments used to be a normal thing in different library buildings across the city, but now there are only 13 left out of 30. One superintendent lived in the library on 42nd Street for many years, and his own daughter was even born inside that building. The apartments came in different sizes, and some had up to 8 rooms. By 2006, the last resident custodian retired, and now these apartments are used for other library needs. It's known as the tallest building in the world, but Burj Khalifa is actually not one, but several constructions connected into one. It has a Y-shaped plan, and if you look at it from above, it's scary. I mean, it resembles a spider lily. It's uber flexible and can bend a little bit when there are strong winds or even earthquakes, so it stands safe and strong. Burj Khalifa has over 24,000 windows, and it takes a crew of 36 people around 3 months to clean them all. There's a crypt beneath the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and visitors pass through it every day. The first architect of this famous landmark designed it as a grand vestibule, which means just a big entrance hall. Several years later, plans changed, and the room was supposed to become the final resting place for George Washington and his wife Martha. She agreed to it, and architects changed the Capitol plans to add a tomb below the famous rotunda. They also planned to put a statue of Washington on top, and there was going to be a 10-foot hole in the ceiling so people could look down and see his tomb from the rotunda. But Congress couldn't agree on all the details of this memorial, and the tomb remained empty. Years later, workers closed the big hole in the floor, which was meant to give light to the tomb because cold air was leaking into the rotunda. At some point, the crypt was used for bicycle parking. Today, it has statues of famous people from the 13 original colonies, and George Washington and his wife are buried out back. No, actually, they're in Mount Vernon. There's a hidden clock and a calendar in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. The 83-foot obelisk works like a giant sundial, using its shadow to show the time and even mark special days like the solstices. When the sun is at its highest point in the sky, called solar noon, the shadow of the obelisk falls on a line of stones on the ground. On the winter solstice, the shadow reaches its farthest point. On the summer solstice, the shadow is much shorter. There are also 5 other special markers that show when the sun enters different zodiac signs. The long, thin granite line running from the obelisk toward the Pope's window shows exactly when it's noon. British seaside Brighton stands on top of a secret network of underground tunnels with Victorian sewer systems and a hidden road. They say the tunnels were built below the Royal Pavilion, so that King George IV could go on, secret dates. History experts say it's not true, and the king actually used tunnels to keep his servants out of sight when they moved between the pavilion and the stables. The 30 miles of tunnels are now over 150 years old, and you can see some of them with an organized tour. But some parts of them are still in use. One tunnel serves as an emergency relief valve for heavy rain. Another tunnel has a shooting range inside. The bascule chambers inside the Tower Bridge are one of the coolest hidden spaces in London. These spacious rooms were built as an operational center to let the bridge's huge counterweights move for the bridge to open. They were the final stage in the construction of the bridge. Now, if you're lucky, you can see these chambers on a special behind-the-scenes tour of the bridge. You'd have to descend 115 steps below water level until you get into the cold and damp space with rumbling overhead. Sometimes they organize concerts here, and the acoustics are just perfect. In the early 1930s, there was a real race in New York to construct the tallest building. Once 40 Wall Street was finished, it won the title. But then, the architect of the Chrysler Building added a spire to its top, and it became the new champion. The spire was waiting all this time inside the top of the building. Workers had to carefully lift each section of it and assemble it on top. They used nearly 4 million bricks to finish the whole building and laid them all out by hand. There were also some elements from Chrysler's automotive empire, like hubcaps, fenders, and radiator caps. There was a private apartment and office on the top of the building for the founder of the Chrysler Corporation. They say he liked to brag he had the highest toilet in Manhattan. I'm sure he was flush with pride. The Capitol Records Building in Los Angeles has been sending secret messages since it opened, and you need to know Morse code to understand them. That secret message is Hollywood. The light has been sending the same message since the opening in 1956, but it has changed a couple of times. In 1992, to celebrate Capitol Records' 50th anniversary, it flashed Capitol 50. Then, before Katy Perry's album release in 2013, the message was also changed, but hardly anyone noticed the difference. One more fun fact about the building, it was the first circular office building in the world. Producer Samuel Lionel Roxy Rothafel designed a hidden apartment for himself in the Radio City Music Hall in New York City. He chose for the apartment, now called the Roxy Suite, to be decorated in the Art Deco style. It has 20-foot-high ceilings covered in gold leaf and walls with floor-to-ceiling plush drapes. Some of the most famous guests of the apartment were Judy Garland, Walt Disney, and Samuel Goldwyn. Today, it only opens for special occasions and looks exactly the same as it did in 1936. You might be able to rent it out for a private event, but they say the prices are very high. Grand Central Station in New York has a great hidden activity for travelers. There are tennis courts in a secret space named the Annex. This area used to be a recording studio. Now the location is known as the Vanderbilt Tennis Club, and you can visit it and play tennis there. The U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. has a secret sports facility where clerks, off-duty police officers, and other Supreme Court employees can play basketball. This court, the basketball court, is located on the top 5th floor of the building and goes under the nickname the highest court in the land. There's a fun sign next to it saying, "Playing basketball and weightlifting are prohibited while the court is in session." Well, we wouldn't want to tempt the justices to, drop everything they're doing to play a game of horse, but I think that would be fun.
In case the most exciting thing you've ever found in the street was an old quarter, prepare to be really jealous of this elderly woman from Romania. She found a rock in a stream bed and decided it was bulky and heavy enough to become an excellent doorstop. So she brought it home and used it for years. After she had passed away, her relative inherited her property and the doorstep with it. He somehow realized it was more than a quirky home decor piece and sold it to the state. It turned out to be one of the biggest intact chunks of amber in the world, worth over $1 million. Experts believe it's somewhere between 38.5 and 70 million years old. Amber is a fossilized tree resin that's millions of years old. In the Romanian village of Colti, People have been digging up this gem from the riverbanks since the 1920s. The largest amber deposits in Europe are in the Baltic region, but with the right conditions, different types of amber can form anywhere, from Alaska to Madagascar. The huge amber nugget, serving as a doorstop, blended in so well that even jewel thieves ignored it when they robbed the house. Luckily, the Romanian authorities did recognize it as a national treasure of the country. It's now kept in a museum, and no, they don't use it as a doorstop. A building contractor named David Gonzalez bought a house in Minnesota for slightly over $10,000. It was built in 1938 and needed some serious renovation. While fixing it, David found an unusual piece of insulation among old newspapers. It was the very first comic book introducing Superman, a copy of Action Comics #1, from the same year that house was built. The comic wasn't in perfect condition and the cover was detached, but it still sold for $175,000, which was 17 times more expensive than the house. If the comic had been in better shape, it could have been worth way more. By the way, the most expensive comic ever sold so far is the very same one, yet it was in pristine condition. To get the comic in their collection, the buyer had to shell out $6 million in 2024. Previously, other copies of the same comic book were sold for $1.5 million and $3.5 million. A fisherman from the Philippines was out on his boat near Palawan Island during a storm. When he tried to drop his anchor, it got stuck on something he thought was a rock. He swam down to free it and realized it was a giant clam, and inside it, there was a huge pearl. The fisherman didn't know how valuable the pearl was, so he kept it under his bed for good luck for nearly 10 years. After a fire ruined his house, he showed the pearl to other people. It turned out to be the largest pearl in the world, weighing 75 pounds, about 4 times as heavy as a dachshund, and as big as 1 foot wide and 2.2 feet long. It's worth around $100 million. Today, the pearl is on display at the City Hall near Puerto Princesa to help attract visitors to the city. A really lucky someone who preferred to stay anonymous bought a ring at a car boot sale in the 1980s. It looked like a beautiful piece of costume jewelry, so $13 seemed like a fair price for it. They wore it for many years, until one day they decided to take it to a jeweler to find out more about it. The jeweler discovered that it was actually a real 26-carat cushion-shaped diamond set in a mount from the 19th century. The ring was put up for sale at an auction in London and sold for over $800,000. It was roughly double its initial estimated value. Diamond fans from today would hardly recognize their favorite gem in this rock because it was cut in an old-fashioned way. It was made for candlelight, so they tried to do everything to make it visible. The silver around it darkened over time, so it didn't look like something worth hundreds of millions. The ring most likely belonged to someone from the royal family or just a really rich person, as diamonds were super rare back then. Experts think the new owner will recut it, and it's going to multiply the diamond's price. Next time there's a yard sale next to your house, don't ignore it. You could end up buying a small bowl for $3 that's actually worth millions. It's actually what happened in New York State. A lucky someone got a Chinese bowl for around $3 without knowing it was 1,000 years old. The bowl was sitting in the living room for several years, and then curiosity took over and the owner got it assessed. It turned out to be a real treasure from the Northern Song Dynasty called a ding bowl. The only other bowl like it is in the British Museum in London. 4 bidders were fighting for the New York bowl at an auction. Finally, a London dealer bought it for over $2.2 million. In 1970, a woman from Rhode Island bought a pretty ceramic plate for less than $100. She liked it so much that she hung it on the wall above her stove. Over 3 years, it got covered in grease from cooking. In 2014, the lady took her favorite decoration to the TV show called Antiques Roadshow to have it checked out. To her surprise, she found out it was a plate designed by the famous artist Pablo Picasso in 1955 and worth over $10,000. In 1991, a man bought a painting at a thrift sale for just $4 because he liked the frame, even though the picture itself wasn't very pretty. When he took the painting apart, he found a piece of paper hidden behind it, folded up like an envelope. It turned out to be a very old copy of the Declaration of Independence, printed in 1776, right after the original was signed. A friend convinced him to take the copy to an auction house. When experts looked at it, they recognized it was one of only 25 copies printed by John Dunlap, the official printer for the Continental Congress. The document sold for $2.2 million the same year, and then again for $7.4 million in the year 2000. A man named Andy Fields, who loves garage sales, bought a set of 5 paintings for just $5 at one of those events in Las Vegas in 2010. He took one of the paintings home and decided to reframe it. When he took off the backing, he discovered a hidden drawing behind the painting. It looked like a sketch by the famous pop artist Andy Warhol, known for his bright colors and bold designs. Experts believe Warhol drew the sketch when he was just 9 or 10 years old, and it could be worth $2 million. Andy Fields decided not to sell it immediately, though. He hopes it can be displayed in a museum instead of being locked away in a vault. A painting worth over $1 million was used to cover a hole in the wall. The owner bought it along with some furniture for almost no money. They didn't know how valuable the painting was until they played a board game about art called Masterpiece, which had a picture of a similar painting. It turned out to be magnolias on gold velvet cloth by a famous 19th century American artist named Martin Johnson Heade. The Museum of Fine Arts in Houston bought the painting for $1.25 million.
Imagine sitting at home, drinking coffee, and watching a new episode of your favorite series. And suddenly, boom, crash! What's happened? Nothing terrible, just a meteorite that has just crashed into your kitchen after breaking the roof. You might think this story is entirely made up. But that's what actually happened in New Jersey during the Eta Aquarid meteor shower, which is active from April 19th to May 28th and peaking on May 5th through 6th. The space rock itself was the size of a pork roll sandwich. It was also pitch black and weighed almost 4 pounds. It slammed through the roof and hit the wooden floor, ruining it. When the inhabitants of the house found the rock and touched it, it was still warm. Luckily, the thing wasn't radioactive and there was no one at home at the time this intruder arrived. But the most shocking thing about this meteorite? Astronomers believe it might have come from a cosmic snowball traveling far, far away from Earth. To explain this, I'll have to tell you a bit more about the Eta Aquarid. This meteor shower is famous for its fast meteors, leaving long, glowing trails. It's produced by Comet Halley, completing its orbit around the Sun every 76 years. The comet hasn't visited Earth since 1986 and won't come back until 2061. Right now, it's somewhere near the constellation of Hydra, which is more than 100 light-years away from our planet. Every year, Earth has to pass through trails of debris left by the comet. They collide with our atmosphere, disintegrate, and create beautiful, colorful streaks in the night sky. And it happens every time Halley returns to the inner solar system. Its nucleus sheds a layer of ice and rock into space, and some of it reaches our planet. The Central New Jersey authorities believe the meteorite that sneaked into the house originated from that meteor shower. But I feel that you might be pondering another question that confuses many people. What's the difference between all those space bodies? I mean, there are so many of them flying out there. Meteors, meteorites, asteroids, comets. Ugh. Okay, let's figure it out together. An asteroid is a rocky body orbiting the sun. It's usually not very big and quite inactive. Comets are different. They're covered with ice that normally evaporates in sunlight, forming a coma, which is what a comet's atmosphere is called. This coma consists of dust and gas. A comet also has a tail that is made of dust and/or gas too. A meteoroid is a small part of a comet or asteroid that orbits the sun. If this meteoroid manages to sneak into Earth's atmosphere and vaporize there, it's a meteor. It's often called a shooting star. And finally, if a meteoroid manages to survive the passage through our planet's atmosphere and lands on Earth's surface, it becomes a meteorite. If you think such space guests are a rare occurrence, that's not exactly true. Every day, our planet is hit with more than 100 tons of sand-sized particles. About once a year, a large, car-sized asteroid enters Earth's atmosphere, turns into an impressive fireball and burns, luckily, before reaching the surface of the planet. And every 2,000 years or so, a meteoroid the size of a soccer field hits Earth, causing a lot of damage. And now, imagine this. A huge, really ginormous asteroid is approaching our planet. There's no one on Earth to predict its appearance. Neither is there anyone to stop it. That's why soon, the asteroid crashes into the surface of Earth. The force of the collision is so powerful that the space visitor doesn't stop until it gets through the crust to a depth of several miles. The impact leaves a crater of more than 100 miles across. Thousands of cubic miles of solid rock instantly turn into vapor. The crash sets off a series of natural disasters that erase 75% of life on Earth. The creatures that were close enough to see the crash don't survive for longer than a few seconds. Even closer to the impact crater, the ground is covered with thousands of feet of hot ash, grit, and rubble. Several seconds later, everything for many miles around bursts into flames. What doesn't burn down within the next several minutes after the collision faces a different, even more terrifying fate. The asteroid causes a monstrous, largest ever tsunami. A recent study claims that it was thousands of times more powerful than any wave people have ever seen. The tsunami was so devastating, it eroded seafloor sediments half a world away. The team of scientists even remodeled the events of the first 10 minutes after the impact, and the model showed that the asteroid had produced waves up to 30,000 times greater than one of the largest tsunamis people have ever recorded, the one in the Indian Ocean in 2004. You've probably already guessed that I'm talking about a real-life event, namely the asteroid collision that wiped dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. The Chicxulub asteroid, as we now know it, is believed to come from the outer reaches of the solar system. This space body was at least 6 miles across. It crashed into the shallow seawaters near the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact was so powerful that it left its signature on the face of the planet. In 2021, researchers found out that the collision had carved mega ripples into Earth's crust in the region of modern-day central Louisiana. But such devastating events, when an object that large threatens Earth's inhabitants, happen very rarely, once every few million years. Space rocks smaller than 80 feet usually burn up in the atmosphere of our planet, causing little to no damage. If a rocky meteoroid larger than 80 feet but smaller than half a mile across was to hit Earth, it would cause local damage to the impact area. As for a space rock with a diameter larger than half a mile, it'd likely have worldwide effects. And these space bodies aren't even the largest. For comparison, asteroids populating the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter can be as huge as 580 miles across. But you can breathe out. They're too far away, and don't pose any threat to our planet. All the time, our scientists keep learning more and more about hazardous asteroids and comets. They have even established a Planetary Defense Coordination Office, aka PDCO. It ensures that potentially hazardous objects get detected as early as possible. An object is considered potentially hazardous if its orbit is predicted to bring it within 5 million miles of Earth. It should also be large enough to reach the surface of our planet, over 100 feet across. Interestingly, a meteorite impact isn't the worst thing you need to worry about. Some scientists warn that the most dangerous thing is the shock wave produced by a meteor breaking apart in the atmosphere. For example, one meteor, which originally was an asteroid the size of a 6-story building, entered our planet's atmosphere in February 2013 and broke apart 15 miles above the ground. This generated a shockwave that was equivalent to a ginormous explosion. An even larger space visitor was called the Tunguska meteorite. It was also 10 times more energetic. It broke into pieces over the Tunguska River in June 1908, flattening 500,000 acres of forest. If the meteorite hadn't been so huge, this event would have gone undetected because of the remote location where it all happened. So it's a good thing that 90 to 95% of meteors don't survive the fall through our planet's atmosphere. Only those that are made of stronger materials make it so far. Most meteorites, though, are thought to come from comets, which are way more fragile than asteroids. We should also consider the speed of a meteor. If one is approaching Earth at a slower speed, it's more likely to survive the collision with the atmosphere of our planet. It means that the meteor won't burn completely, and some of its remains will reach the ground.
So, what's the longest you can survive without looking at your phone or watch to check the time? My personal record is about 13 minutes. But someone has no trouble living without knowing the time for 63 days. In the summer of 1962, a French chap named Michel Siffre took off his watch and went down into a cave in the French Alps. The then 23-year-old spent the next couple of months in complete isolation and without seeing the sun. And that's how he accidentally became the founder of a whole field of science called chronobiology, or the study of biological rhythms. Michel's original plan was to study an underground glacier he had discovered earlier. He wanted to spend 15 days underground, but then thought it wouldn't be enough to do serious research and decided to stay there for 2 months in the dark. It wasn't the comfiest of vacations, as his feet were always wet, and his body temperature was way lower than usual. He spent his free time reading, writing, thinking about his future, and studying his surroundings. He also slept well and ate when he felt like it. There was a team waiting at the entrance of the cave. They agreed the scientist would let them know when he woke up, ate, and before going to sleep. The team wasn't allowed to contact him, just to record when he was sending signals to make sure he was safe and sound and keep track of his life cycle. Siffre also informed them of his pulse and counted from 1 to 120, 1 digit per second. And that's how they found out his perception of time was seriously off. It took him 5 minutes to finish that task instead of the regular 2 minutes. When the team told him it was time to get out of the cave, he was confident it was only August, but it was already the 14th of September. Siffre thinks it had to do with an almost total absence of light. He had just a little light bulb in the cave. It all felt like one long day to him, and his memory couldn't keep track of what he was doing yesterday or 2 days before. The most important result of his experiment was proving that people, just like animals, do have an internal clock that doesn't depend on the day and night cycles. Siffre didn't stop there and went on dozens of expeditions to spend some time inside caves. 10 years later, he started a 6-month experiment in Texas. All this helped him to find that when people don't have time cues, they switch to a 48-hour cycle, not the 24 one we're used to. It would be 36 hours of activity and 12 to 14 hours of sleep. NASA used the results of his experiments to help astronauts who had short-term memory issues after some time in isolation. Now, in 2021, a Spanish woman beat Siffre's cave record. Beatriz Flamini spent 500 days in a cave outside of Granada with basically no contact with the rest of the world. She insisted that the support crew wouldn't give her any news at all, even if something happened to her family members. The idea of this rough experiment was to test her own limits and also help scientists understand how staying in such extreme conditions affects the human mind and body. During the experiment called Time Cave, Flamini received food from a drop-off point and sent GoPro videos of herself to the support crew. They checked the footage to make sure she was physically and mentally fine. Flamini spent the entire time working out, reading books, painting, weaving, and making food. She didn't shower, but the support team took out her natural waste once every 5 days. At some point, flies filled the cave, but Flamini braved on and continued the experiment. Around day 300, she had to leave the cave and stay in a tent in isolation for about 8 days because of a technical issue. When 500 days elapsed, the support crew found Flamini sleeping. She had lost track of time completely and said it always felt like 4 a.m. to her. She didn't want to leave as she hadn't finished the book she was reading. Although she started hearing things that weren't real and had a strong craving for roast chicken, the extreme athlete never even considered leaving the time cave earlier than planned. Researchers from several Spanish universities will analyze the data from this unusual experiment. Intricate biological rhythms govern our lives, from the smallest cellular processes to the functioning of the entire body. These rhythms regulate various aspects of your physiology, including sleep patterns, body temperature, hormonal balance, metabolism, and cardiovascular activity. Many diseases get stronger during nighttime or in the morning. Shift work disrupts the balance between internal rhythms and external time, so scientists blame it for diseases. Jet lag is a good example of how your internal clock gets out of whack because you move to a different time zone. But light, especially when you catch it at certain times, can help reset your body clock. When you see light at the end of the night, it nudges your clock forward, and early evening light can push it back a bit. It takes about a day for your body to catch up with each hour of time difference. And since our natural body clock ticks around 24.2 hours, it's easier for us to adjust to longer days out west than shorter ones out east. That's why when athletes or researchers live underground for a while, they end up feeling like they're in a time warp. Back in the 70s, scientists found the circadian clock mechanism in a fruit fly. It has to do with different genes. One gene revs up the other, which then puts the brakes on the first gene, creating a swinging rhythm. During the day, when the sun's up, a photoreceptor tells certain parts of the loop to relax. There's a whole complex network of molecules and neurons making sure everything ticks just right. Every living thing's got its own circadian clock, with its own set of clock genes doing the work. Besides light, other stuff, like temperature and food, helps sync up an organism's clock with the outside world. Now, if you're feeling adventurous and want to try cave isolation yourself, how about the deepest one on our planet, Veriofkina Cave? It only got this title in early 2018. It was explored step by step, deeper and deeper. The first expedition to this cave in the West Caucasus only explored around 5% of it, but it was already nearly 400 feet. It was obvious there was much more to this cave, with a small entrance diving into the limestone of Earth's crust. Expeditions from all over the world went back there until they finally reached the bottom. The world's second, third, and fourth deepest caves are all nearby, hiding deep in the mountains of the Arabica Massif. It is one of the largest karst massives on Earth, but it's still not well explored because it's really tricky to get to this area, only accessible up to 4 months of the year because of weather conditions. Going all the way down there is really tricky and takes several days. There are underwater waterfalls with near-freezing water, flooding, obstructed entrances, and other surprise dangers. So if you aren't ready for the deepest of them, you could go with the longest one. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky has over 400 miles of limestone labyrinths already explored and probably around 600 miles still to discover. Over 500,000 people visit the cave every year as part of organized tours. You can choose between a classical and more extreme version, learn about the cave's cultural history, or attend a concert within its stone walls. You can also enjoy meeting over 100 wildlife species living there. One of the most famous and unusual of them is the eyeless cavefish. It has adapted to the environment without light by no longer growing eyes. The LaLaurie Mansion, located in the French Quarter of New Orleans, has a grim reputation. Its former owner, Madame Delphine McCarthy LaLaurie, was a wealthy socialite in the early 19th century. The urban legend says that she treated her workers very badly. One night on April 10, 1834, Madame LaLaurie's house began to burn. Madame and her family managed to escape, but she abandoned her workers. They were locked inside the house. The locals, outraged by her negligence, gathered around the house, broke some of its walls, and eventually stole the remaining possessions. After the fire, the LaLaurie family escaped to Paris. Another private mansion was built on this Louisiana land. But it's said that the ghosts of those workers are still trapped inside the property. They tend to bother living people demanding justice. Today, the house is private, but you can book a tour and hear this story in detail. By the way, the mansion and its notorious owner played a big part in the American Horror Story franchise, although they didn't actually film the series in that particular house. American actress and director Kathy Bates played Madame LaLaurie and showcased the quirky character of this famous woman. so you can check it out if you're not afraid. Our next creepy destination was also shown in a movie franchise, the Amityville Horror. The media says this Dutch colonial-style home is located in the village of Amityville in New York. George and Kathy Lutz bought this property in 1975 for $80,000. The low price was due to the tragedy that happened in the house 1 year before. One night, a young man named Ronnie DeFeo, who lived in the house, took the lives of all his family members. The Lutz family began to notice strange activities in the house, such as phantom odors, unreasonably low temperatures, and loud sounds of unknown origin. According to the Lutz family, one day they called a preacher to clear the grim vibes, but he felt very bad during the ritual and his hands started bleeding. The Lutzes fled the house in a rush. Their spooky story inspired the Amityville Horror, a book written by American author Jay Anson and several successful horror movies. Although the house was reconstructed, it still exists. However, its address has been changed to confuse the trail and prevent crowds of tourists from gathering around it. Do you recognize this seemingly cute house in Harrisville, Rhode Island? It's known as one of the most haunted houses in America. The property earned its notorious reputation after multiple people lost their lives in this house over the years. In 1970, the Perrons family began to live here, and according to the legend, an invisible being lived along with them. At first, the entity was playful, but then it started getting more sinister. The family members experienced physical attacks and unexplainable illnesses. They invited the famous mystery hunters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, to research this case, which later inspired a book and the movie The Conjuring, released in 2013. In 2019, the property was purchased by the Heisens family, who also investigated mysteries. They reported some weird stuff going on in the house too, and eventually developed a successful business on haunted tourism. They sold the property for nearly $1.5 million in 2022. Let's move on to Tennessee. The urban legend tells a creepy story that started in 1804. John Bell and his family moved to this peaceful-looking farm in North Carolina. At first, everything went well, but 13 years later, the family began to experience bone-chilling events. At first, they started seeing weird animal-like shadows around the farm. Soon, these mysterious guests began to whisper and eventually talk out loud. Some mysterious entity began to wake up the family at night with loud noises and attacks. It particularly bothered their young daughter, Betsy Bell. Invisible hands grabbed Betsy by the hair and hit her body. When she grew up and was about to get married, the entity did everything to break the engagement, saying that Betsy wouldn't be happy with her groom. Rumors about these scary events spread throughout the village, and the locals began to visit the farm, hoping to see it for themselves. They called the entity Bell Witch. Many years have passed, but the locals still believe that the phantom of the evil witch lives in these places and hides in a cave near the farm. Ohio is one of the most notoriously haunted states in the USA. One of its legendary spots is the Mansfield Reformatory, a former prison that supposedly hosts the country's most creepy entities. The prison is nearly 130 years old. It was closed in 1990 and soon gained fame, especially after becoming the filming location for The Shawshank Redemption. And since we're passing through Ohio, let's take a look at another spooky place. The Chippewa Lake Amusement Park used to attract many guests with its various rides, roller coasters, and iconic Ferris wheel. But in the 1970s, 100 years after opening, the park was forced to close. It happened due to poor maintenance and low attendance. The park has gone through multiple fires, so today it looks like a bunch of creepy ruins overgrown with shrubs and rust. Mark Twain had been living in this charismatic house in Hartford, Connecticut for about 17 years. In this period, he wrote both The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Today, this property serves as a museum that showcases the author's life. But it's also known for some mysterious phenomena. Multiple visitors reported hearing odd noises and seeing a phantom of a woman in white. The most haunted part of the house is the billiard room. Twain used to chill there a lot during his stay, And today, some visitors claim they can smell tobacco smoke as they pass through. Now, Pennsylvania has lots of terrifying tales to offer. Despite its chic appearance, this fancy mansion has been empty for a while now. Its owner, Peter Widener, finished the construction after losing his beloved wife, Hannah, during a tragic yacht trip. It happened at the end of the 19th century, and eventually, Widener lost multiple relatives in this house. He was wealthy enough to invest in the Titanic construction. Perhaps he was fascinated by the idea of an unsinkable ship. But unfortunately, both Peter's oldest son and grandson lost their lives when the Titanic sank. Eventually, the mansion was abandoned. But it's said that the phantoms of the Widener family are still there. And speaking of the Titanic, Molly Brown was one of the survivors. She got famous for rowing a lifeboat for about 7 hours before reaching a safe place. But Molly's own mansion in Denver gained a spooky reputation. She owned the haunted property together with her husband, who ran a mining business. Over the years, multiple people reported seeing phantoms of cats and human figures running down the staircase of the house. The witnesses of such visions insist that something spooky is definitely going on behind these walls. Today, the mansion operates as a museum, so you can go and see it for yourself. And how about meeting a creepy phantom while doing some casual shopping in Soho? The urban legend dates back to 1799. A young lady, Gulielma Elmore Sands, tried to escape with her lover, Levi Weeks. They were tenants in the same boarding house. Around 2 weeks later, her body was found at the bottom of a well in the building that today hosts a large retail store, COS. After the horrifying discovery, the police arrested Levi. Although he was acquitted, Sands' phantom is said to haunt the building as a warning to other ladies. The creepiest thing is that the well is still there, and shoppers can see it in the basement at the back of the men's department. Now, brace yourself and welcome to the famous haunted toy store in Sunnyvale, California. The legend says that the land under the property used to be a plantation owned by Martin Murphy. He hired a preacher, Johnny Johnson, who fell in love with Murphy's daughter, Elizabeth. But she got engaged to a lawyer. Johnny's heart was broken, and he lost his life in an accident while chopping wood. Today, Johnny's phantom reportedly wanders around the Toys R Us store, still chasing his beloved Elizabeth. Customers and employees report seeing objects moving on their own, hearing mysterious footsteps, and even Johnny's whispers over the intercom system. Ooh.
Tunnels, metro, underground systems, and even secret passageways to the houses of the rich and famous. Why else do we need tunnels, you may wonder? To hide. Many cities have underground tunnels and even underground doppelgangers. Now let's make it clear. Those passages are normally not connected, contrary to the popular rumor claiming that it was possible to get from Scotland to Turkey using underground passageways built around 5,000 years ago. I mean, it sounds insane even today. Imagine building it back in the day. These tunnels have an official name, the Erdstall Tunnels, and they were most likely built in the Middle Ages. However, we still don't have the exact information about the date. The highest concentration of those tunnels are in Bavaria, Germany, but there are many of them in Great Britain and France too. Erdstall tunnels, a unique type of earthen passage found globally, are characterized by their narrow, oval-shaped corridors and tight choke points, known as schlups, or slip-outs. Despite speculation, their purpose remains a mystery. However, some of those tunnels have fireplaces and even vents, which might mean those were used primarily for shelter. Dating back to the Middle Ages, possibly as early as the 12th century, Erdstall tunnels lack archaeological signs and historical records, so it's not a surprise that there are many rumors about their use. Some scientists are sure those were storage spaces, though their narrowness makes this impractical. Another idea is that they provided hiding spots for farmers during tribal raids. However, their single entry point raises doubts about their effectiveness in evading threats. Now, if you're feeling like Indiana Jones and want to venture into those tunnels, you're in luck. A few structures, like the Erdstall Radkoblücken in Austria, welcome visitors to explore these enigmatic structures. Most of them are closed to the public eye, though. The origins of Erdstall tunnels remain largely unknown, just like their real functions. And if you think, hey, it's the 21st century here, we can study pretty much everything, well, you're wrong. What makes these tunnels hard to study are the tight confines. Traditional surveying methods often prove inadequate in such spaces. To solve this problem, scientists use a handheld device that integrates an RGB camera, a gyroscope, and high-resolution depth sensors, allowing them to capture intricate details of the tunnels. They also use modern techniques like 3D surveying in hopes of uncovering the true origins and purposes of those tunnels. One hypothesis even suggests they may have been poorly conceived dwellings, abandoned when their inadequacies became apparent. Still, not everyone quite agrees with this idea. Other theories suggest they served spiritual purposes, while the most intriguing idea speculates that those tunnels may be remnants of extraterrestrial civilizations. Experts believe they may have been used for practical matters, such as granaries or hiding spots from looters. As we don't have exact info on who built it and when, it may be pretty much anyone, even a sloth. Nope, I'm not a lunatic. Sloths can build giant tunnels. Check this out. In 2009, a farmer in southern Brazil was driving his tractor through a cornfield when it suddenly sank into the ground. He quickly discovered he had broken through the top of an underground tunnel. When researchers came to investigate, they found a tunnel around 6.5 feet high and the same 6.5 feet wide, extending about 50 feet long, right beneath the farmer's house. When they looked closer, they instantly saw deep claw marks on the walls. That was the proof the tunnel wasn't human-made. So that thing the farmer uncovered was a megafauna paleoburrow, a prehistoric tunnel dug by ancient creatures like giant ground sloths or giant armadillos from over 10,000 years ago. I know, it's hard to imagine those beasts, but let me help you. Take a hamster. Now, increase it to the size of an elephant. Don't forget, this 13-foot-tall hamster could also walk on two legs. During their time, around 15 million to 10,000 years ago, many species of sloths and giant armadillos roamed the Americas, some even digging similar tunnels. Today, many of these tunnels are filled with sediment, though some remain clear, similar to the one the farmer discovered. This 2009 find sparked significant interest, leading to the discovery of over 1,500 paleoburrows across southern Brazil, making it the era with the highest concentration of such sites worldwide. But no one knows exactly why there are so many of them in southern Brazil. While some paleoburrows exist throughout South America, none have been found in North America, which is weird since those huge sloths roamed the entire continent. The exact purpose of these large tunnels remains a mystery, but scientists believe they may have served as nursing spaces, temperature regulation, or hibernation areas. Tunnels likely developed over centuries as successive generations of sloths and armadillos expanded them. Now, let's take a look at fugus. No, not the Japanese fatal delicacy, and no, not a town in New Guinea. To see them, we gotta travel to the UK. So fugus are underground structures too, but they don't look exactly like tunnels. They are dry stone structures. They look as if a cave had been decorated with stones from the inside. There are only around 15 of them found so far, and most of them are located in Cornwall. According to the estimates, those tunnels were built about 2,400 years ago, and they're still in pristine condition, which is truly fascinating. I mean, back in the day, people had no cool machinery whatsoever, yet their structures still last. And if you dare to buy an apartment today, well, chances are you won't be too happy about the quality. Going back to our fugus, there's nothing extraordinary about their supposed purpose. They could be used for spiritual purposes, as a place to hide, or a food storage. The latest application, though, is a bit weird. I guess it's not a secret for anyone that England is famous for its excessive humidity. And if you want to store your food properly, you gotta avoid the humidity at all costs. Otherwise, say welcome to mold and fungi. But ancient people weren't dull-witted at all, or they wouldn't have survived, and you and I wouldn't be around now. So they might have adapted those fugus to store just some products, those that already had natural molds in them, assisting in the preservation of perishable food, like milk, butter, and cheese. But hey, those are just speculations. The true reason why they were built remains unknown. What makes fugus unique is that they are intentionally built tunnels, not just excavated mines like those in Wales. They were crafted by digging deep trenches, lining them with stone slabs, covering them with capstones, and then filling over them, all of which took significant time and effort. Still, no matter how hard those were to construct, cities around the globe are often built over intricate tunnel systems, each unique to its location. For instance, Paris is famous for its extensive underground quarries, which were abandoned years ago, but still pose a risk of collapse in certain areas above. London boasts one of the largest tunnel networks in the world, including many that were specifically created for military purposes. In New York City, there are rumors of secret tunnels, while Los Angeles has old tunnels from the Prohibition era used for speakeasies. Many other cities also have their share of enigmatic tunnels, and surprisingly, Florida is no exception. It happened in the year 2011 in Ybor City. Near a former post office, flooding uncovered something weird, a section of an unknown structure. Back then, people didn't pay much attention to that, so it took another 7 years to discover something truly fascinating. This historic neighborhood was founded in the 1880s, but it remained unknown until 2018 that it also has a hidden tunnel network. We only learned of it because of renovation work. The exact purpose, of course, is unknown, but most scientists are pretty sure that they serve to connect to early gaming spots and the port of Tampa. Figuring out how extensive the tunnel network is tricky. In 2018, a historic home in Seminole Heights revealed locked doors leading to tunnels from the 1920s. One local even said he traveled through a tunnel for 20 minutes. Rumors suggest some tunnels connect to the Hillsborough River and Ybor City. Research is ongoing, but no new info has emerged yet. What you're viewing is recognized as the most densely populated location to have ever existed. It spans just 6.4 acres, which is equivalent to 13 Starbucks coffee shops located in the Empire State Building. And while a huge coffee shop like this one can host, say, 1,000 guests, this place somehow managed to have around 33,000 people squeezed in. Some estimates suggest that the actual number could have soared to 50,000 at some point. This is Kowloon Walled City. The city is relatively young, settled in 1898, but its history goes back nearly 1,000 years to the Song Dynasty. Originally a modest fortification, it remained largely unchanged until renovations in 1847 added defensive walls, leading to its revival a half-century later. But back then, the area was sparsely populated rather than crowded. To really understand just how packed this area got by the mid-20th century, let's compare it to some others. Take the East Village in New York City, for example. It has a little park at its center, but mostly it's filled with a mix of historic homes and newer apartment buildings. As of 2010, it was home to over 44,000 people, making it way more crowded than the rest of New York City, which is saying a lot, since New York City is the most densely populated city in the US. By most standards, it's pretty busy. But then you look at Kowloon Walled City, and it's a whole different ballgame. If all the land there could be split proportionally between the residents, That would be somewhere around 5.5 to 8.5 square feet per person, if we count land only, while science claims people need 200 to 400 square feet at home just to feel good. So, why was everything crammed together like that? Well, it comes down to Kowloon Walled City's unique status. It was never officially part of the rest of Hong Kong. What started as a small Chinese military outpost became more significant when a larger fort was built nearby, coinciding with the rise of Canton Harbor. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, this site transformed into a tourist destination, eventually becoming home to around 400 squatters. However, in the 1930s, the Hong Kong authorities intervened, relocating the inhabitants and demolishing the dilapidated structures. The 1940s and 50s were pretty rough times for folks in Kowloon. And while the residents were somewhat accustomed to different countries vying for control over their land, they were definitely caught off guard by natural disasters. In January 1950, a massive fire broke out that wiped over 2,500 huts, leaving almost 3,500 families, which is about 17,000 people without homes. This disaster really underscored the need for better fire safety measures, especially in the squatter areas made mainly of wood. The problem didn't end there. Due to the lack of control from both the Chinese and British authorities, except for a handful of operations conducted by the Hong Kong police, the walled city became a refuge for illegal activities. It was not until a trial in 1959, which took place within the walled city's boundaries, that the Hong Kong government was officially recognized as having jurisdiction there. By that time, however, organized crime groups known as triads had already established dominance over the area. Starting in the 1950s, triad factions such as the 14K and Sun Yee-un took control of all the criminal dens within the walled city. The environment became so dangerous that police would only enter in large numbers. It wasn't until 1973 and 1974 when over 3,500 police operations led to more than 2,500 arrests and the confiscation of illegal produce that the influence of the triads began to diminish. Only a decade later, the local police chief announced that the crime rate in the walled city was now under control. And even though crime dropped, the walled city still became known for having a surprising number of unlicensed doctors and dentists who could work there without fear of getting into trouble. That was a win-win. Many working-class people couldn't afford licensed dentists somewhere in Hong Kong, so they would go to Kowloon to receive affordable health care. You get it now. What can attract people in such a seedy place? Right, it's zero oversight. And zero oversight means that anyone could start their business here, no matter how shady it was. However, there were some totally normal entrepreneurs. For example, noodle makers. Despite all the dangers, the population of the city kept growing. But how can you create more houses if your territory is very limited? Simple. Think vertically, not horizontally. So, local developers started stacking more and more stories, as if those were Lego bricks you could easily add on top of your tower. This led to a crazy population boom, making the city feel like a little world of its own, with over 33,000 people being crammed into 300 buildings on just about 7 acres. By the late 70s and early 80s, the city hit its peak size. But that came with some quirks. However, there were limits on how tall buildings could go. Those could not exceed 13 to 14 stories, and it was because of planes flying into Kai Tak Airport. Yeah, living close to the airport meant residents had to deal with a lot of noise. Water was provided through 8 municipal pipes, although there were options for wells too. Some streets barely saw any natural light thanks to the way buildings were packed in, and fluorescent lights were the go-to for illumination down below. It was nighttime all the time in there. So, the city buildings were pretty tall, yet the city had merely 2 elevators for its entirety. At the base of various skyscrapers, both shared and private mailboxes were affixed to the walls. Frequently, this left the postman with no choice but to ascend on foot. Even several floors high, the tangled network of paths persisted, intricate passages that wound their way into the city's core through a web of bridges and staircases. But let's say you live in such a place and want to have a walk or just a bit of fresh air. What do? In such cramped conditions, rooftops will serve you 1,000 purposes. They can be a space for physical activities and a kid's playground, but they can also be used as venues for pigeon racing, with residents making their guess concerning which pigeon comes first. And it's illegal for sure. Such rooftops can pose certain risks because of the narrow spaces between the buildings. But locals use them also as landfills. The absence of efficient garbage collection led to some residents to transport their larger waste items up to the roof. Consequently, many rooftops became crowded with abandoned mattresses, damaged furniture, and appliances. Hey, I get the feeling that I'm talking about something that actually exists. Sorry for that, I totally forgot to mention the most important thing. This city ceased its existence back in the 1990s. What happened? Long story short, both Chinese and British authorities grew increasingly weary of the chaos unfolding in the city. Control was difficult, if not impossible. Criminals kept proliferating and the area was in disarray. Consequently, officials from both countries chipped in and allocated approximately $350 million in compensation for the locals, who had been kicked out of that area as the city was demolished. Kowloon exists today, but not as the infamous walled city. It's now an urban area in Hong Kong, which is located in a completely different place. It just has the same name. As for the area that used to be Kowloon, there's now a park known as Kowloon Walled City Park. Architects and thinkers still look back at Kowloon as a prime example of the organic megastructure concept from the 60s, which envisions cities as flexible networks that grow and change with their residents. Almost forgot. If you're looking to catch a glimpse of the real deal, you should watch Crime Story, starring Jackie Chan, as some scenes were filmed there.
Ah, Phoenix. This sizzling gem in the Sonoran Desert isn't just another American city. It's more like a giant oven where you can throw a party, as long as you don't forget the ice. Seriously, if you find yourself here in the summer, brace yourself for some serious heat. We're talking about temperatures that regularly pass 100 degrees. And in 2024, Phoenix hit 110 degrees 55 times during the summer, tying the record set just the year before. Now, I get it if you're not a fan of hot weather, but apparently a lot of people love living in a sauna. Phoenix ranks as the 5th largest city in the United States, and it is the capital and most populous city in Arizona, with 1.7 million residents as of 2024. And if we're talking about the metropolitan area, also known as the Valley of the Sun, the population is almost 5 million. Yet, good luck finding someone actually born here. Out of every 4 Phoenix residents, 3 were born somewhere else. Believe it or not, Phoenix wasn't always this bustling, crowded place. It became one. A few decades ago, it was just a sleepy little dot on the map. Back in the 1940s, the population was around 65,000. It wasn't even close to cracking the top 100 list of the largest U.S. cities. Now, at that time, Phoenix was mostly an agricultural hub, and its economy revolved around what they called the 5 C's: cotton, citrus, cattle, climate, and copper. But things really started to change in the 1950s thanks to one life-changing invention. Drumroll please? The air conditioner. Actually, it was the portable version that came out in 1945, created by an American inventor named Robert Sherman. Phoenix residents owe a lot to Robert for making life bearable during scorching summers. Before AC, people in Phoenix would literally move their beds outside and build sleeping porches. They'd protect that kind of outdoorsy space with light curtains or some kind of net to keep the dust and bugs out. Fun. Anyway, the point is that the air conditioner played a big part in making Phoenix an easier place to live. Since the 1940s, this city in Arizona has transformed from a dusty little town into a sprawling urban jungle, and it's still one of the top 10 fastest-growing metro areas in the U.S. The best part is, it looks like that won't change anytime soon, since this 519-square-mile metropolis is surrounded by rolling desert, with plenty of room to keep growing as far as the eye can see. So, who's dropping everything to move to Phoenix? Well, Californians are the city's biggest fans. According to a recent survey, a third of all new renters moving to Phoenix come from Los Angeles. Okay, that survey might not be the most reliable since it only applies to the source's clients, but it does line up with U.S. Census Bureau data from 2019, which says that 70,000 Californians moved to Arizona in the previous year. The connection between Phoenix and LA is so strong that some people even call Phoenix the next LA. You've got to give Phoenix credit for capitalizing on its proximity to Southern California. The city offers lower taxes, fewer regulations, and lower costs of living, which makes it a magnet for businesses, especially in high-tech and service industries. So, in the 90s, Phoenix was considered a non-stop generator of jobs. In the last few years, we've seen the number of jobs only go up, and the unemployment rate has dropped by nearly half, going from 6.3 in January 2014 to 3.4 in the same month in 2024. Now, when it comes to big city problems, you can't avoid talking about traffic. But here's another reason why Phoenix is a dream city. It doesn't even come close to the traffic nightmares you find in places like LA. Estimates show that people in Los Angeles waste about 119 hours a year just sitting in traffic. But in Phoenix, it's more like 61 hours. Huge difference, huh? And let's not even start talking about the money people waste just sitting in traffic. In LA, drivers burn through about $2,440 worth of gas per year. In Phoenix, they waste 25 gallons of fuel, which ends up costing about $952. Yeah, that's still a lot of cash, but compared to LA, come on, that's a steal. Phoenix being okay in terms of traffic might have a lot to do with how the city was designed. Just take a look at a map of Phoenix. You'll notice it looks like someone took a ruler and drew perfectly straight lines for the roads. That's because the city was laid out in a grid system. This setup makes it so much easier to get around, especially compared to cities full of confusing twists, U-turns, and one-way streets. It just simplifies things, whether you're a local or a tourist. Plus, Phoenix has nice wide streets. Most cities have one major road and a bunch of narrow streets that just can't handle heavy traffic. But Phoenix has wide roads everywhere. So, when the freeways get jammed, you can just hop onto a parallel street and still get to work without stressing out too much. When you look at all the job opportunities and the relatively smooth traffic, it's no wonder people are willing to put up with the heat and move to Phoenix. But don't get it twisted, the heat is no joke. It is really, really hot and sunny out there. We're talking about 300 days of sunshine on average, or about 85% daylight hours per year. But once again, Phoenix has made the best of it, and all that constant sunshine has turned Phoenix into one of the top solar energy cities in the country. Now, you may be wondering, a city in the middle of the desert with barely any rain, do they actually have enough water? Well, they do. Phoenix has its water situation pretty well sorted out, thanks to multiple sources. I mean, they don't rely on rain alone, which is a good thing because, desert life. Most of their water comes from way up north and east of the valley, where snow melts off the mountains and flows into giant reservoirs, storing it up for those dry years. But most of Phoenix's water comes from the Salt River Project, which brings water through canals and pipelines from the Salt and Verde rivers. Then there is the Central Arizona Project, which transports water all the way from the Colorado River. They even get a bit of water from underground wells. And Phoenix doesn't want to waste a drop, so they're smart about recycling, reusing treated water to keep parks green, and even recharging their groundwater. Since Phoenix is all about sunny skies nearly every day of the year, it's normal that people can get a little moody when it actually rains. But here's the thing. Phoenix always gets a surprise up its sleeve, even when it comes to bad weather. When it rains in the deserts, locals get treated to this unique earthy smell. It's thanks to the creosote bush, a desert plant that releases an amazing fragrance when the rain hits it. People describe it as the smell of rain, and honestly, it's one of those fresh, clean scents that makes you forget you're in the desert for a second. And if you've never stopped to think about why Phoenix is called Phoenix, well, it's based on that famous legend of the bird that rises from the ashes. Now, after knowing all the special things about this city and its unique ability to turn challenges into advantages, we can say the name couldn't have been better chosen. At the time, nobody knew it was Steve Jobs' last public appearance. He spoke in front of the Cupertino City Council just 4 months before he passed away. And there, he presented the new Apple Park campus project. Now, back in the 90s, Apple built its first campus and called it Infinite Loop. The entire place was set up in a ring around a looped road, named after the programming thing where a code runs on repeat forever. Cool, huh? Anyway, it was fine for a while, but as Apple kept growing, they simply ran out of room, so they began grabbing more buildings around the area. Eventually, it turned into this messy setup of mismatched offices that didn't work together at all. Instead of ditching Infinite Loop, Apple decided to keep it and build a huge modern campus nearby. They got lucky with a giant plot of land right next to Interstate 280. This highway cuts through Silicon Valley, so it would be super easy for people to get to work. That land once belonged to Hewlett-Packard, but since this company was downsizing, they decided to sell, and Apple jumped on it. Interestingly, Jobs worked at Hewlett-Packard as a teenager, which made the land acquisition personally significant for him. To create their dream campus, Apple brought in a big-name architect, Norman Foster, and his design studio. The idea was to make one giant building big enough to fit 12,000 people. That's why the main building of the campus is a massive ring with a focus on collaboration. The creators wanted to ensure that workers from different departments could meet frequently in shared spaces. A major feature of the building is the use of giant curved glass panels. They provide awesome panoramic views and an overall sense of openness. The ring-shaped building is surrounded by tons of parkland. Inside, it's divided into 9 sections, connected by bright, open atriums. And it's all wrapped in a continuous wall of floor-to-ceiling glass, so you get a full view of the green space outside from anywhere inside the ring. The setup inside is also different. It's one huge open space where people can sit wherever they want, like in a co-working space or on a college campus. The whole idea is to get people to work together more easily. Surprisingly, or not, after all, introverts do exist, not everyone is on board with this open layout. Some Apple employees, especially programmers, say it's actually hard to concentrate with all the open space and noise. Now, even though that massive circular building is incredible, it still doesn't have enough room for everyone at Apple. So they've been adding extra buildings nearby. But the new ones aren't as crazy cool in design as the main building. To keep things running smoothly, Apple also set up a private shuttle system to get employees through the traffic-heavy streets of Silicon Valley. Apple Park wasn't simply expensive to build. It was next-level expensive, reportedly costing around $5 billion in total. When you break that down, it comes out to about $1,785 per square foot, or a surprising $12.40 per square inch. That's because almost everything in Apple Park was custom-made and thoroughly designed. how about we take a closer look at what went into some of the major structures? The main building, also known as the spaceship, is the heart of Apple Park and the most recognizable construction. The main ring-shaped structure is huge, measuring a full mile in circumference. The building itself is famous for its over 3,000 custom-made curved glass panels, which form the continuous glass walls. And here's how much all that beauty cost Apple. Then there's Steve Jobs Theater. This venue is a special addition to the campus, created in memory of Apple's founder Steve Jobs. It spans 160,000 square feet and seats up to 1,000 people. This makes it perfect for Apple's famous product launches and other events. The theater's lobby alone cost about $12 million to build. Architect Norman Foster designed it so that only the elegant all-glass lobby is visible from the outside. This pavilion is supported entirely by glass with no columns, which makes it the largest structure in the world to be fully supported by glass. The architect wanted the construction to look like a jewel nestled in the park. The entire theater sits underground and opens into a stunning 20-foot-tall glass cylinder. The cylinder is capped by one of the world's largest carbon fiber roofs. And here's how much the entire theater cost. The visitor center at Apple Park was designed so that even the general public could get a small taste of the Apple Park experience. This building includes a guest reception area, a display zone where visitors can check out Apple's products, and a cafe. There's also an additional 2 million square feet of parking here, which cost around $26 million to construct. Well, at least it ensures plenty of space for visitors. The Visitor Center even offers an exclusive Apple Store with merchandise that's only available at this location, along with an augmented reality tour of the campus. It's as cool as it sounds and gives people a virtual look at what it's like inside Apple Park. The construction of the Visitor Center wasn't cheap either. Now, Apple takes employee well-being seriously, and the campus includes a massive 100,000 square foot fitness and wellness center with state-of-the-art facilities. This isn't just your basic gym. It's got multiple gyms, a 2-story yoga studio, and even meditation rooms for mental wellness. There are also facilities for team sports, physical therapy spaces, and even on-site medical and dental services. It seems there's everything to make sure employees have the support they need to stay healthy and active. It all comes with a hefty price tag, though. Apple Park doesn't just look futuristic. It's also designed to be super eco-friendly. But before we dwell on that, let's take a look at Apple's giant data center in Reno, Nevada. This data center powers services like Siri, iCloud, Apple Music, and Apple Pay. The complex is made up of 5 huge white buildings, connected by a long central corridor, and holds more than 200,000 servers. To keep everything running and cooled, this data center is fully powered by 100% green energy from 3 Apple-owned solar farms. And it's not just the Reno data center. Apple has announced that all its facilities, from the Apple Park headquarters to its distribution centers and retail stores worldwide, now run on 100% renewable energy. Apple Park itself is part of this commitment. 17 megawatts of solar panels cover its roof, making it one of the largest renewable energy installations of its kind globally. At the moment, this 100% green energy goal covers only Apple's direct operations and doesn't yet include its suppliers. But the company has already convinced a few dozen of its key suppliers to commit to using 100% renewable energy for the parts of their business that serve Apple. But probably the coolest thing of them all is that Apple Park was engineered to handle California's earthquake risks. The building relies on a technology called base isolation. It essentially places the whole structure on 692 large steel saucers 2 stories underground. In the event of an earthquake, the saucers allow the building to slide up to 4 feet in any direction, so the whole construction remains stable and protected. This floating design helps the structure withstand even severe tremors, keeping everyone and everything inside safe. Now, unlike campuses like Google's, Apple Park is actually closed to the public. Luckily, there's the visitor center we talked about. At the moment, it's likely the only way outsiders can experience the vibe of Apple Park without needing an employee badge. In every sense, Apple Park is much more than just an office space. Its unique design, cutting-edge technology, and commitment to sustainability reflect Apple's brand and values. For Apple, this isn't just about making a workplace. It's about creating a high-tech, eco-friendly environment that shows off the company's obsession with quality, design, and perfection. You'd be surprised to find out the life-changing discoveries a person can make just by browsing Google Maps. Like this guy, who found a suspicious crater and might have made a major scientific discovery. In 2024, Canadian Joël Lupoint was planning a casual camping trip in his homeland. He opened Google Earth and zoomed in Quebec's Côte-Nord region. That's when he saw it, this unusual rounded structure. The measurement was impressive, 9.3 miles from one point to another, and there seemed to be a lake next to it. He was quick to print the screen and sent the image to a French geophysicist to see if he knew anything about it. Most times these images turn out to be nothing, or simply Google Earth watermarks. But he was surprised when he opened his email and saw the scientist's reply. The geophysicist said that, judging by the looks of the topography, Lupoint could have discovered a meteor impact area. Now, impact areas are really hard to identify. Since they've been around for millions of years, most of their shapes have been heavily changed by erosion. Scientists call these areas impact structures. They're usually circular or crater-like and are made up of deformed bedrock. It happens when a meteor falls into the surface of the Earth. Here's the thing. Since the crater has huge walls around it, these areas are usually mistaken for mountain ranges. That's what left the Canadian explorer confused. But the French geophysicist that analyzed the case gave him hope. That weird formation in Quebec had been classified as a type of volcanic formation. After Lupoint brought this subject back to the agenda, scientists had to dig a little deeper to find the truth. Until this recent discovery, scientists thought the area looked like that due to some volcanic formation. This is actually normal, since other things such as volcanism and sinkholes can be mistaken for impact craters. To verify, they asked for some samples of the site. This is a more reliable way to fact-check whether a meteor landed there or not. When the meteor hits the Earth, it brings different types of minerals from outer space. That's the wonderful thing about impact craters. They reveal a link between Earth and the outside universe. By now, scientists have cataloged most of the minerals that are native to our planet. When they're searching for an impact structure, they usually look for things such as tinnite and chemisite, which can only be found in meteors. The biggest known impact crater in the world is the Vredefort crater, located in South Africa. This big thing was formed some 4 billion years ago. The asteroid that made it is estimated to have been one of the largest ever to strike planet Earth. When the researchers got the results of the site back in Canada, they did confirm that it contained zircon, a mineral that tends to show areas of impact. There's no way to guarantee that Lupoint really found an impact crater, but scientists are organizing a research mission over to the area just to make sure. If it turns out that it really is an impact crater, that's pretty huge news, since the last discovery was made in 2013. Another one of these mesmerizing discoveries came from a 15-year-old boy. William Goddery was also a Canadian, and for some reason loved looking for long-lost Mayan cities. Different from the previous story, William had an intention and a research methodology. He had studied many books on Mayan civilizations. He believed that Mayans built their cities in relation to the stars in the sky. So he opened a book and mapped all the cities that have already been unearthed. And that's when he noticed something important. There is an area in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico where archaeologists have unearthed 2 Mayan cities. But on the constellation map, there are 3 stars. He thought to himself, could this mean there is a lost city waiting to be discovered nearby? William Goddery is known to be a science genius and has even won an award for this constellation theory. When he noticed that a 3rd city was missing from the 23rd constellation he was examining, he began to search Google Earth for satellite pictures that could help him solve this mystery. Advances in satellite tech have shed new light on long-lost Mayan cities such as Tikal. Located in the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan Empire. He had hopes, so he reached out to a friend inside the Canadian Space Agency to verify what he had found. Since he had already won awards for his research, he had friends in high places, and that's when things got interesting. According to the images, there was a large square area on the border of Mexico and Belize that looked like the remains of a city. William took the images to a remote sensing expert. They studied the images thoroughly and concluded that the area could be housing 30 buildings and even a large pyramid. William named the new city he discovered as Mouth of Fire. However, his story was very much contested inside the archaeological community, and many Mayan experts worked to debunk William's findings. Experts say that constellation theories are too unscientific. Renowned anthropologists and astronomers said William's methodology was an act of creative imagination. Still, a 15-year-old teen almost found a long-lost Mayan city, which is pretty exciting if you ask me. What about these tiny dots that appeared on images of Google Earth? These strange spotted circles were found in the middle of the Algerian desert. A YouTuber browsing on Google Earth found these circles and discovered that people had been debating over their origin for years. He thought they were a glitch from satellite images. There are dozens of them, stretching for miles and miles in a straight line. They're far away from any town, road, or human activity, making it hard to understand if it was man-made or just a natural phenomenon. To settle this mystery, he interviewed the people who took Google Earth's pictures. He found out they were 100% true. The circles were there in real life. They appear in multiple pictures from multiple years. Now, at first, he guessed they were the result of oil activity. Algeria is a rich area for natural resources, so this made sense. To find out if the area is worth extracting, companies usually undertake seismic surveys. They're a way of analyzing the Earth's surface by sending shock waves into the ground. Depending on how these waves bounce back, you'll know what is located underground. There was another possibility. The Sahara is a very dry area of the planet. The average high temperatures in summer are over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. To survive there, people need to find ways of accessing water. So, his second guess was that the circles were kind of ruin or leftover from ancient water wells. But when he talked to an expert, he found out they weren't ancient water wells. You can see some of these traditional constructions in other cities on Google Earth, and they look really different from the mysterious circles. He decided to travel over to Algeria to find out the truth. He drove 99 miles into the heart of the desert, and when he gets there, he sees it. A huge crater dug on the sand, surrounded by 12 smaller holes. It kind of looked like the ancestor of a modern clock. There, he found something he couldn't spot on Google Earth: thin metal wires. When the curious YouTuber and his teams started to dig in the sand, they found old dynamite and some sardine cans. Apparently, they were hiding the truth. The Sahara Circles, as they were famously called, were not the historical leftovers of seismic surveying. Back at the time when these circles were made, this technology didn't even exist, but they were sure related to oil exploration. The dynamite holes were an ancient method of oil searching, and the sardine cans, well, they were left by the workers who were exploring the region. Another Google Earth mystery solved. If you walk through this small stone doorway in Hierapolis, Turkey, you might never come back alive. Back in ancient times, people thought it was some sort of portal to the underworld. Romans would go in carrying perfectly healthy bulls, but after a few minutes, they would watch these animals collapse as if hit by some mysterious force. But what's even weirder is that nothing happened to people. They could walk in and out just fine. Now, recent studies might have an answer for these eerie happenings, and it all has to do with people's heights. The gate, known as Plutonium, named after Pluto, the deity of the underworld, is a stone doorway leading to a small 32-square-foot cave. But the real danger is what is going on beneath it. Hierapolis is a super active geological area, and there's a big crack under the city that constantly emits volcanic carbon dioxide, which comes up as a visible mist. During the day, the sun dissipates the gas. At night, the gas forms some kind of a carbon dioxide lake on the sheltered arena floor. At dawn, you need to get out of there before it's too late. This whole place can turn particularly life-threatening right before the sun rises, when the carbon dioxide concentration, about 15 inches above the arena floor, reaches 35%. That means birds, bulls, and even humans can suffocate and pass away in just a couple of minutes. But there is a scientific reason that explains how Romans could get out of there unharmed. The carbon dioxide concentration drops quickly with height, so animals perished while their handlers, being taller and standing up, could walk out and breathe safely. Most people can't stay inside the Begarn fort after sunset. This 16th century fort, located about 146 miles from Delhi, is known as one of the most haunted places in India. During the day, the area is bustling with visitors who can walk through the main gate of this once grand fort city and check out the ruins of temples and palaces. But they will also see this big sign at the gate that dramatically warns everybody that all access is strictly forbidden after dark. That's probably because at night, according to locals, women can be heard screaming and crying in that place, along with the sounds of bangles breaking and strange music. Others have reported seeing shadowy figures and flashing lights among the ruins, or even smelling a strange perfume floating around. Iwata no Yabushirasu is one of Japan's most restricted forests, located in Ichikawa. The forest itself is a small area, covering just a little more than 40 square yards, and it is mostly a thick patch of mosu bamboo. Its location next to a parking lot and modern buildings makes it seem less intimidating, but don't be mistaken by its appearance. Since at least the 19th century, people have said that anyone who enters this forest is bound to disappear and never be seen again. So, as soon as you arrive, a sign near the forest tells you about its history and the curse believed to be linked to it. Some rumors suggest the creepy presence of an ancient samurai lord walking around. Other legends say that the forest hides a bottomless pit filled with poisonous gas. Whether these stories are true or not, today, the area is enclosed by stone walls, and entry is still strictly prohibited. In a valley called the Dark Entry Forest in Connecticut, you will find Dudleytown, but you definitely shouldn't go inside. Not only has the land been private property since the 1920s, but it is also known as one of the spookiest places on Earth. This place was first settled in the early 1740s, and many of the original settlers were from the Dudley family. That's why it's called Dudleytown. There's a local rumor that the town's founders were descended from Edmund Dudley, an English nobleman who lost his life for treason. The legend says this curse followed the Dudley family all the way across the Atlantic to America, and their misfortune is said to be responsible for crop failures, mental problems, and several tragic incidents in the village. Again, it is all just rumors, since historians haven't found any real evidence to support these claims. Still, the pitch-black surroundings and the eerie Blair Witch Project vibe going on in that place fueled ghost stories in the 1980s. This led to many cases of vandalism in the following decade, and because of that, the landowners closed the area to the public. This old abandoned building used to be the fancy palace of King Farouk's family, who was the penultimate king of Egypt back in 1936. After his family members passed away, the palace was turned into a morgue. Locals say that today, the whole place is super creepy and off-limits. Some people have reported seeing light bulbs flicker and shadows move around, making strange noises. Once, a group of kids allegedly went inside and totally freaked out when they found all the doors had suddenly disappeared, leaving them in complete darkness. They had no choice but to start screaming for help. This Hawaiian island has been off-limits to people for over a century. It's called Ni'iau and is the smallest inhabited island in Hawaii, covering around 69.5 square miles. It has around 84 residents. The island doesn't have cell phone service, paved roads, or power lines, just solar panels for electricity. A single family has privately owned the island since 1864, when a Scottish farmer bought it for $10,000, which would be around $250,000 today. The island has stayed in the family, passing down to its descendants, the Robinsons. They have kept it private ever since, so access is highly restricted and basically by invitation only. The Erdstall tunnels are a network of about 2,000 mysterious underground passageways mainly found in Central Europe, especially in Austria and Bavaria. These tunnels are usually narrow and cramped, often just wide enough for one person to squeeze through at a time, and they are believed to date back to the Middle Ages, as far back as the 12th century. What's really puzzling about these tunnels is their purpose. Despite a lot of research, nobody really knows why they were built. There is a theory that they were used for storage, but since many of them are below the waterline and occasionally get filled with water, that doesn't seem very practical. These tunnels have very light, almost claustrophobic sections and sudden drops, which doesn't seem practical for other straightforward uses like escape routes, hiding places, or even spiritual purposes. To make things even more mysterious, there is a complete lack of artifacts, which makes it even harder for researchers to figure out what these tunnels were really for. Since 2019, adventurous people can get arrested if they try to climb this rock. Uluru, also known as Ayers Rock, has been off-limits because it is now considered a sacred site for local communities. But the fact that it is also extremely dangerous probably played a big role in the decision to close it off to visitors. This rock is 1,142 feet high, which is about the height of an 80-story building. The climb to the summit can be very slippery, and high temperatures, which can hit 116 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, have led to people passing away from dehydration and heat-related issues. Something even creepier happens at the top of the rock right after storms. When it rains, small tadpole-like crustaceans called shield shrimp hatch in temporary waterholes and rock pools on top of Uluru. These extraterrestrial-looking creatures are about 3 inches long, and they spread their super-resilient eggs everywhere. When enough summer rain comes, they hatch and go wild, feeding on microorganisms and bacteria in the water. How these strange creatures end up in the fleeting pools on top of Uluru is still unclear, but the most likely explanation is that their eggs might travel there with the wind. There once was a kingdom where the ancient Egyptians traveled to buy gifts for pharaohs, sort of like an ancient shopping mall. This kingdom, named the Land of Punt, was rich in luxury goods, including gold, aromatic resins, blackwood, ebony, ivory, and exotic animals like leopards and baboons. All of these sound like great gift ideas to me. The Land of Punt was an especially important trading partner for Egypt for over 1,000 years. But if you plan to go there, the bad news is that it hasn't survived to these days, and nobody knows for sure exactly where Punt was located. We only know about it from records. The most famous of them were left on the walls of the temple of Queen Hatshepsut, who had sent an expedition to Punt. Scientists have been trying to find the exact location of this rich land for over 150 years. It could have been southeast of Egypt, in a coastal region south of it along the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and the Indian Ocean, or it could have covered the Horn of Africa and the area across the sea in southern Arabia. Now researchers were finally able to narrow down the possible locations thanks to a study of baboon mummies. Ancient Egyptians admired baboons and even thought they were related to the deity of the moon and wisdom. One species, the sacred baboon, was often shown in wall paintings, sitting with its tail curled to the right, and was mummified in this position. Another type, the olive baboon, was wrapped up in one giant cocoon. Both types were found in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. But if you remember geography lessons, baboons just don't wander around Egypt, so they must have been brought there through trade with other regions. Primatologists, Egyptologists, geographers, and geochemists look at the mummified baboons from two different time periods in ancient Egypt. Some were from the New Kingdom period, and others were from the Ptolemaic period. The scientists did some more hard work and analyzed tissues from 155 baboons from 75 separate places in eastern Africa and southern Arabia. Those were all areas that they thought could be the ancient Land of Punt. They measured oxygen and strontium in the baboons' bodies. When animals drink water and eat plants, their teeth, hair, and bones show a geographic signature of where they've lived, thanks to these elements they contain. Scientists use a special method called isotopic mapping and found out that the New Kingdom baboons they analyzed came from a location in Eritrea, Ethiopia, or Somalia. 5 mummified baboons from the Ptolemaic period had strontium levels that matched those found in Egypt. So, ancient Egyptians might have had a special place to breed and keep baboons, probably in Memphis, a city in Lower Egypt, not Tennessee. Meanwhile, paleontologists from New Zealand got lucky, as some boulders had split open from the tide and revealed fossils of the largest penguin that has ever lived on Earth. The scientists used laser scanners to make 3D models of the ancient penguin bones. They compared these bones to the flipper size of modern penguins and did some math as to how much the old penguins might have weighed. Today, the biggest penguins, emperor penguins, weigh between 55 to 100 pounds. Researchers think that the penguins from the past that they found weighed around 340 pounds, real giants in the penguin world. These huge flightless birds lived in the oceans around New Zealand more than 50 million years ago, after the dinosaurs went extinct. They totally took advantage of their big bodies to stay warm in the cold water. They might have even traveled the world thanks to it. And they'd scare off any predators, but they didn't have any. The asteroid that took down the dinosaurs also got rid of most big marine reptiles, and the ancestors of seals and whales were still living on land. Back in 1992, 4 farmers in China were draining water from their ponds and accidentally bumped into a ship full of gold and ancient statues worth millions. Just kidding, they actually found the Longyu Caves. Those are 24 big caves created by people a long, long time ago. Even though they are so large and well-made, no one knows who built them, why they were built, or how they were built. Experts think the caves are at least 2,000 years old, but they don't understand why these caves aren't mentioned in any historical records. All of the Longyu caverns look the same and aren't connected to each other. Each cave has one entrance connected to a vertical shaft with a carved staircase. Rain and water from the surface can flow into the caves through these stairs. To manage this water, the caves have special grooves, channels, and a system to catch the water at the bottom. So it looks like the ancient builders were real pros when it came to drainage and water management. Maybe my town could learn a lesson from them, as it turns into Venice after every heavy shower. Anyway, the caverns were built below a hill, named after a bird that is one of the most respected creatures in Chinese mythology and culture. It symbolizes all the best things, like high virtue, grace, and the union of yin and yang. Scientists think there could be a connection between the caverns and the bird, but it's just a theory so far. Experts from the National Institute of Ocean Technology in India were doing their routine pollution surveys when they found some structures that looked like a city underwater. Using special sonar technology, the team found big geometric shapes on the ocean floor. They brought up different items from the site, like pottery, beads, sculptures, parts of walls, and even human bones and teeth. They thought the ruins belonged to a civilization older than the Bronze Age Indus Valley Civilization, which is the earliest urban culture of the Indian subcontinent that we know of so far. But not everyone joined in on celebrating this awesome discovery. Some archaeologists refused to believe it and thought it could be some computer tricks. And even when they saw hundreds of artifacts from the ocean floor, they said an ancient river could have brought them there from someplace else. The team that discovered the underwater site decided to prove they were right. They chose a piece of wood as their main evidence. They tested it and found it was 9,500 years old. That could be the age of the entire site. Skeptics still insist that we can't rewrite all human history because of one piece of wood. Even 23 years since the discovery, no one is sure about the final answer. This is partly because it's hard to explore the site. It's in extremely dangerous waters with strong currents and riptides. During the cool Antarctica's summer, from late November through January, geologists from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee climbed the frozen slopes of the McIntyre Promontory in the Transantarctic Mountains. High above the ice fields, they looked through the mountain's gray rocks for fossils from when the continent had green forests. By the end of their trip, the geologists found fossil pieces from 13 trees. These fossils show that the trees are over 260 million years old. This means the forest grew at the end of the Permian period before the first dinosaurs even appeared. More than 90% of all species on Earth disappeared back then, including the polar forests. These trees would have been very tough if they grew in Antarctica and could have survived. But a huge increase in gases, like carbon dioxide and methane, must have taken them down. This Antarctic forest is a terrific way for us to see what life was like before the extinction, and we might even understand what caused it. It also shows us how plants were different back then from those we are used to now.